Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another event which follows the launch of the Parag on a list this year. In lieu of the World Environment Day, which falls on June 5th, uh, today we are talking about children's literature and environment and how books and stories address environment and how they connect with each other. Tejasvi Shivanan, who was our PHL English jury for this year and who is also a library curator and educator, has very kindly agreed to moderate and steer the event today. He's going to introduce the panelists and also talk about the session today, Children's Literature and Environment, today and tomorrow. Over to you, Tejas.
Thank you, Tuhina, and hello, everybody. So I'd begin by just introducing our stellar panel, and then we'll just go into it. Among our three panelists today is Bijal Vacharajani. And when Bijal is not reading a children's book, she's writing, and many of you would have read her books, or she's editing a book, and you may have actually read many more books that she has edited that you didn't know were gone through her hands. She is the author of multiple planet-friendly books, including A Cloud Called Bura, Savi and the Memory Keeper, and Kit in Trouble. Bijal is also, as you may expect from her preoccupation with writing, a certified climate warrior. I'd also like to introduce second panelist, Tanya Majumdar. So Tanya co-founded the children's publication program at Kalpavriksha, which has produced several award-winning books focused on the environment. She has authored several non-fiction and fiction books, her latest being The Monster Who Could Not Climb a Tree. She has also developed localized education material for Kalpavriksha. Previously, she has worked on designing reading and creative thinking programs for schools. And she's not just involved in creating books, but is also personally deeply involved in wildlife and community conservation issues. Her basic training is in herpetology with the snakes and is part of Kalpavriksha's Conservation and Livelihoods program. And finally, our last panelist is Rohan Chakravarti. Of course, if you know of green humor, then then you know Rohan's work. And his birds, particularly to me, is quite striking, and it immediately kind of takes me to a different way of thinking about conservation and just wildlife in general. Rohan is widely known for his comic strip called Green Humor, and he uses art and humor to draw attention to important environmental issues. His illustrations create awareness about creatures and habitat that need our immediate attention, and also highlight pertinent political and social issues around conservation. So welcome, panelists, Bijal, Tanya, and Rohan.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I kind of, before we go into the panel itself, I thought, why are we talking about this particular theme today? In a way, if you look at it, like anything that's happening around us, culture reflects events that are part of the present and has done so in history for a long time. And part of culture is also how culture captures this, is in terms of literature, in terms of books, in terms of art, in terms of so many other ways in which representation becomes part of memory and part of the future. Now, what's happening today to our world is climate change, and we know this. There's been evidence for this for a long time, and for the last 10 or 20 years, people have been talking about it more, and there have been documentaries produced. News is constantly flooded with items on what's happening with climate around the world. The most iconic symbols we have are of the ice caps melting, of of sea level change, of temperature change, of climatic phenomenon that are affecting lives across the world. Each one of this has a photograph, has a story, has a book that is capturing all of this. And this has been happening for some time now. But if you look at it, is children's literature particularly reflecting this? Amitav Ghosh some years ago wrote an essay on this, and he questioned if fiction is actually capturing what's happening with climate change, and is it responding to what's happening as culture should. There was a bit of a wake up in some ways with that essay. But I feel that with the climate change, there are many dimensions to it. And it's one of the several ways in which humans have interacted and shaped and changed the global environment over the last few, a millennia of our existence as a species. And the rate at which some of these changes are happening today are remarkable compared to how climate change has happened in the past. And therefore, the impacts are even so more. So are we responding, recording it, and communicating to society? And particularly today, since we are looking at children's literature, are we doing this as children's literature as well? So before I go into the panel, I would like to also mention that that in the Parag Honor List this year, there is a major theme of environment and conservation that among the books that have been selected for this list. And you can see on your screens now the range of books that have been over the years been part of this list. So there is a response. So we know that. But we can hear now from different individuals, some facets of what this response is like. So first I'll call upon Bijal. Hello, Bijal.
Hi, Teju. Firstly,
Hi.
I want to say that was a brilliant introduction. I feel like you've said it all.
No. I haven't said. I just gave you set it up for all of you because you have done all this work. As a writer, as an editor, you have been at it for a while now. I mean, even before many people are talking about this with children, you have been writing and publishing on this for several years now. So, and in a way, I know you would hesitate to talk about your own work, but perhaps I would, instead of talking about your one particular book or something like that, perhaps you could begin by talking about your motivation to work in this area, and through that, take us through a journey of what it's been like writing and editing books on this theme. Maybe that would be a way for you to talk about it.
Sure. So, I used to be a reporter with Time Out in Mumbai, and I used to do a lot of stories around town, which used to be about environment. I used to review books for children. And while I would talk to people, one of the things that kept coming up was climate change. And this was around 2009, 2010. I did some work with 350.org on climate advocacy. And I realized that I actually didn't know much about climate change. I mean, everyone was talking about water crisis. Everyone was talking about extinction and what it's going to mean. But it's just so big that it's very hard to grasp it. So I went to get a master's in environment, security, and peace with a specialization in climate change. And while I was studying there, actually, I came across this Asian brown cloud phenomena, as it was called. And it was something that stayed with me. It was just about how satellite images had captured this brown cloud formation across South Asia. And I was really fascinated through my studies and through whatever I was reading, that how people would keep framing climate change as what they thought it was. So what the politicians thought climate change is in terms of propaganda, in terms of, not wanting to pass policies, or the media with, sometimes with very little training or sometimes with extensive reporting. or, just adults around me who were constantly like, this is all just something that the media is talking about. It made me realize that climate change is something that people frame even while the science is right there in front of us, and now the proof is literally outside our window.
Right.
And so that's really how I started thinking about science communication, about the way we talk to people. And I've always been interested in children's literature. I came back to India, and Sudeshna Shom Ghosh at that point was with Red Turtle. She was like, do you want to do a non-fiction book around climate change and environment? So that's how I wrote my first book. So you want to know about the environment. But this thought of how people talk about climate change kept in my head.
Right.
And then I was thinking, what if we, this Asian brown cloud is in satellite images, right? What if we actually saw it outside our window?
Right.
How would we react?
Yeah.
And so I started writing fiction that kind of brings all of this together. And it's been a lot of fun because, you end up looking at scenarios and, thinking what is possible. And fiction gives you that space to do it. And you can stretch things and you can talk.
I was reading Savi and the Memory Keeper, and it's really something that what you said is you're able to do that so well over there, where you're creating a character and you're imbuing the character with all many aspects of personality and life in general, but the character is also responding. And as an individual, and one aspect of climate change is that we always feel it's an overwhelming, large-scale phenomenon, and then we are not able to do something about it. And then here you are, as someone who has seen that satellite image, and then you are responding in your own way as an individual in this field where you're supporting the creation of literature and writing yourself. So what was I'm so glad that you brought that out. That what is your thinking about that? About as an individual, what your response is and what it means to you in this field that you're doing it in this field?
Honestly, I think it comes from, firstly, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. So that's a great question.
Okay.
So I think it comes from, actually, I have worked a lot with children as a reporter with Sanctuary Asia. And a lot of it came from the fact that today children have so many more questions. They have a lot more information. When I was a child, I didn't have that sense of agency that I think children today have a lot more. I don't think it's across all demographics, of course, but I did not have that. But I was constantly worried about things. If a tree was being pruned outside my window, I was like, what is happening? Why is it being pruned? Or, when we moved from Delhi to Mumbai and I suddenly started missing my squirrels, I was wondering, I had these questions. And I think that sense of, as an introverted child, that sense of alienation from the world and seeking refuge in the world of books and nature is what I pour into all my characters. They are doomed from the beginning, I tell you.
Well, in a way, in some ways they are doomed, but in so many other ways they also come on top. I feel that with children's writing, a lot of that coming out with something is so important. But at the same time, as an editor, I've seen your work. I've also been following it for many years. One of the books that I really, really was impressed this year, and I've shared this with you already, is this one. And I know you were one of the people behind this book emerging, right? It's Suniti Namjyoti's long short poem, which has been made into a book. And it is very much in this genre of change and climate change. It's very stark and it's quite stunning as a landmark book for poetry and for climate change writing. What prompted you to decide to publish something like this?
Firstly, I love the fact that you love In the Land With Beatles as much as we do. It means a lot, and it's on the Parag Honor list, which really made all of us happy. Actually, my colleague at that time, Aparna Kapoor, had said that she wanted to write to Suniti Namjoshi and, see if Suniti would write for us. And Suniti sent a bunch of poems and both of us were reading it and we were like, this is it.
Yeah.
We want to take this. And then we spoke to Krishna Balashenoy, who's illustrator. so vividly.
Really
Right?
amazing. I mean, each page, the cover itself is, I mean, it tells you what climate change is, right? In a way, what better cover could you choose for this one? Yeah.
And that's the thing, when I read it, I was telling Aparna, I said, to me, it's a climate fable almost. It's very fable-like. And so we felt Krishna gave it that twist of surrealism, yet when you look at it, there are very recognizable spaces in it.
Yeah.
And we also recognize that it's not a very traditional picture book in many ways.
That's right.
But that's the great thing at Pratham Books, that we can innovate, work with some amazing creators, including Rohan.
Yeah, of course.
And see these experiment with these kind of books, which is why, and this book is available in multiple languages as well for children to read.
Exactly. And actually, I was going to, that's a good segue to kind of think about. As a publisher, you're thinking of this. I was also going to ask Tanya a related question, but maybe we can start with you responding to it. Why is it important to have books on climate change in different languages?
You know, it's something I've been thinking about. I have this book called P.S. What's Up with the Climate, which has been illustrated by Archana Srinivasan. You know, the Hindi translation is Jalvayu Parivartan, for climate change. And I was just thinking that we need to really think about language when we are talking about climate change, which is something we've not been doing as a group, I think, because Jalvayu Parivartan doesn't even roll off the tongue very well.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And so how am I going to talk to a child about it?
Exactly.
But that said, it's, you know, we assume that, yes, English is very much, I edit in English and I write in English. I know that most of my books are English first. But the fact is that in India, it's the mother tongue languages that get children reading, opening a book that's familiar. That's their first cornerstone to literacy.
Yeah.
And if we are not going to make climate literature available in multiple languages, we are basically leaving out to section a bunch of children across the country. And these are children who will be vulnerable to climate change, because one is that children are the most vulnerable to the phenomena, but also they are the ones who need to be equipped with this information. They need books in their mother tongue languages to fuel the imagination.
Well, for sure. And in fact, that's, I think, the point for me to even now bring in Tanya to the conversation, because Tanya, welcome to the panel. And thanks, Bijal. I'll come back to you. But Tanya, I just wanted to start you off from where Bijal left in some sense. A lot of the work that's done at Kalpavriksha is looking at stories of conservation stories from particular geographies. It's quite very specific to those geographies. It's very unique to being located in those spaces. The lives and the wildlife from those spaces are reflected in those books. Now, and I think what was Kalpavriksha's thinking in that? Because for me, I always, I mean, taking what Bijal has to say, I was thinking that, you know, climate change has so many aspects of that is at one level very global, which is like images of ice melting in the poles. And we know, there's a wonderful story of Kamnabas in Malu Bhalu, which is located over there. A beautiful picture book of a young polar bear learning how to swim and being taught by the mother how to swim. Now, that imagery is one, but you don't see polar bears. You don't see a lot of other things in your backyard. So how has it been important for Kalpavriksha to publish all this this very focused local children's literature?
Thanks, Tejasvi. So yeah, I think how Kalpavriksha got into publications is that we were doing a lot of localized environment education programs in different regions of India.
Exactly.
Right. So through that experience, sorry, I'm a little out of breath because I had to change my position because of
Location.
network. So yeah, we've done programs in remote regions like Ladakh, in Kutch, and in the Northeast. And through those programs, if you realize, like Kutch, for example, is such
Yeah.
a rich ecosystem. It has thorn forests, it has mangrove, the salt plains,
Grasslands, yeah.
grasslands, all of those. And yet, when we interacted with the students in the schools, they were talking about zebras and giraffes and those animals, which was we felt really sad because there was so much wildlife right around them, but and their ancestors would have known about all the plant life and all the animal life, but because of mainstream schooling, that gap is being created between the traditional knowledge being passed on to this generation of kids. And so we worked on localized like games and books for the children of Kutch. And a couple of books that came out. One is Khari Joni,
yeah.
And one is Shero to the Rescue. Yeah. And so we distributed them to schools in Kutch, but then we thought, why not publish them in English and see what the response is like. And people really welcomed it because these were things that were not seen in children's literature at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So then that somehow gave us that focus to work on other books like that.
No, I'm glad that you shared this, because I think also what you're reflecting is that when children see their own worlds reflected in their books, they're also and see what's happening in their local environment, they're able to then relate and respond to it. If there is something happening very far away, it's harder for that to happen. And you can empathize, you can imagine maybe a polar bear, you can watch it on some documentaries.
Absolutely.
But this is happening in your backyard and it's there in a book. I mean, and you're being told a story that you know so well. What does that do to a child? And that, I think, it's a wonderful, it's wonderful that you are at Kalpavriksha, this is what is being done. And I also remember, there's a conscious inclusion of audiences other than the urban English speaking audience that you would like to address eventually with your work. And these books going out, reaching to a wider audience is as important as Bijal was telling us. But I also want to bring it back to your own work, because I know that, you have had your journey in coming to this. You were a herpetologist, you work with snakes. A woman working with snakes is not very common. We don't hear that. We only know, I mean, as general public, people hear of snake catchers and they are all men. And we rarely hear of a researcher who studies snakes. And what does it mean for you to kind of bring that to your work in children's literature and writing?
Yeah, actually, I like frogs. So frogs are also part of herpetology.
Yes, of course.
And so my interest is mostly in frogs.
In frogs, right.
In frogs, yes. And yes, I've traveled in the Western Ghats, done surveys and things with frogs. And I think how that connects with my work is the fact that we love to publish about lesser known species. If you see our books, there are books about, say, hedgehogs and porcupines, lizards, pangolins, things like that. And in my travels, I actually got to see the real diversity of wildlife in India. And I mean, Bijal and Rohan would be aware, but I don't know. Many of our audience will be aware of the number of species of frogs in our country. There are hundreds, and they are so very beautiful. And up until then, even my own idea of a frog was that it's some dirty brown creature that's found on the roads in the cities. And just to be aware of the beauty of nature and connecting with that, I want children to experience that.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned frogs, and frogs are very vulnerable to climate change. And there are frogs in India as I mean, really old frogs like the Nasica batricus in the Western Ghats, which kind of has ancestors in the Indian Ocean. And you have others who have been, and you have others who have been affected by this fungus that seems to be spreading with rising temperatures across the world. So in a way, you see that here is something that is very close to you, a species that you hold dear in terms of your work. And you want to talk about that with children because they are also being affected. They may be small, but they play an important role in the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I also think, another thing that in your latest book I saw, there is something about children finding their space in nature. Would you like to share the process of how you kind of went about thinking about that and writing about it? I really love the idea of retreating into nature because I found my relationship to it very similar to the little girl in the book.
The boy, Avi.
Sorry. Yeah, the boy. Yeah, sorry.
It. So yeah, the book
the monster
is
who could not climb.
The monster who could not climb a tree is about Avi, who is a little boy with anger issues. Yeah. And he finds solace in a neighborhood tree. Like he climbs up the tree and he suddenly comes down. So the monster is actually an anger monster that's residing in his head. And that's why the title of the book, that the monster cannot climb that particular tree. And how I came about writing it was that, I'm an urban kid. And so many of our readers are urban kids. And not everyone has access to a forest. And of course, I love birding and I love herping and all that. But as kids living in an urban area, how do you connect to nature?
Right.
And do you connect to nature? And so then I thought back to my own childhood, like what was it that got me interested in nature? What was I doing that I could write about? And this one experience really came back to me about climbing trees, and this is exactly how I used to feel when I climbed trees. I could spend hours up on a tree. So then that's what I wrote about.
I think what is remarkable about a book like that is just that it allows every child to find their space. It's not tied into a particular location. It could be anywhere you live, but you can find an unquestioning space. Nature just kind of accepts you as you are. It's not demanding you of anything, and you can respond to it in a way and kind of be there. And I mean, of course, in this book, of course, there's a relationship between the boy and that particular location. I won't give away too much of that because people should read it. But and this is true of any child. If you go, a child from Kutch, a child from Ladakh, a child from Bombay or Bangalore, anywhere could find their space. And that in that finding that space, they are kind of finding their relationship to that little bit of nature that's there around them. And that relationship building, I think that was what was also special I found in your book. It's so important for children to experience, to be able to respond to life after, to what's happening around them. So it's the beginning of what a response would be. And I could see in what you were sharing as well, that your early memories of the connection to the tree was important in bringing, and also, of course, in this book. Thank you so much, Tanya, for that sharing. And I think in all of this, I would just, that communication that you do is also something that now I would want to bring in Rohan to kind of take on. I'll come back to you on this because it's another point that is important, that both Tanya and Bijal have spoken about their writing of books and therefore playing a role in communicating about nature, climate change, what is happening around us with children. Now, I would invite Rohan to kind of speak about his own work and how this has kind of been important in because I feel, we often talk of climate change as though somebody will tell you what's happening. Like in the news will tell you something. Some books might say, give you information about it. But how do you actually connect to what is happening? How do you make sense of what is happening? And in a way, through your illustrations, Rohan, you have been also engaging with this in different ways. And so what is the essence of communicating? I think if you can begin with that, and then we can develop this conversation a little bit, and I can draw the others as well.
Sorry,
Why
I have
is
to
it
deviate a bit. There
Yeah,
is
sure,
just so
sure.
much going through my mind because the conversation has been meandering so beautifully from children's literature to mainstream education versus localized education to Tanya's work. Tanya, I have to say that the synopsis of your story really resonated with me because I had anger issues as a child. Maybe I still do, I don't know. And I can't climb trees. So your book is definitely something I'm going to get my hands on ASAP. About Bijal's work, I really have to say two things here. One is that especially Savi, the one of the best things I like about it is that it doesn't have an essentially happy ending, and that is really important in kids literature because it does not delude its readers. It gives them a very realistic sense of the state of affairs, even though the story has elements of fantasy, and I think that's really beautiful. And I'm also going to speak on behalf of an illustrator I'm a big fan of, who is Krishna.
Right, yes,
I'm
of
sorry,
course.
Krishna, if you're watching this, but the fact that that book was commissioned in itself, it's something that means a lot to illustrators because Krishna's usual portfolio has, celebrity portraits, which I still like, but I know that's not his real potential. His real potential was tapped with this book. And I would really love to see more of...
more, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Also, before I get to that question, an idea for a kid's book just struck me because this conversation has been meandering so much. So listen to this. Okay, there's this bird called the resplendent quetzal in Guatemala that everybody knows of because it's so popular in documentaries. It's on the currency. It's everywhere. But we have a frog called the resplendent bush frog that nobody knows about. So why not have this character, the frog itself, who's complaining to the world that everybody knows about the quetzal, but nobody knows about me in my own country and what he does about it. Tanya, Bijal, are you up for developing this into a story?
How wonderful.
Absolutely, Ron. Send it across.
All right. Sorry, I will stop with the deviations now.
No, that's wonderful. I mean, if a collaboration is born of this panel, then more than, could have done more than what it set out to do.
I really hope so. Yeah, I really hope so. But yeah, the essence of what we've been talking about is, see, when I started out, nobody called it science communication. That was 10 years back. I just called myself a cartoonist. The fancy labels came very recently. And I think that's because everybody is getting a sense of urgency. Now, I've been drawing for the last two COPs virtually live. And one thing I've realized is that climate change is extremely complex. It is not just the melting of ice caps and the drowning of polar bears, etc. It is very political. For example, a particular leader not from the European Union not attending the COP is a big thing, and it could have tremendous implications for a drought-ridden country in West Africa or a Himalayan state in India. And that is how complex climate change is. And I think the sooner we focus on these sort of stories rather than what people already know of, I think that is where this discourse should be going in this day and age. And that's something I've been trying to do with my work. And my portfolio is rather expansive. I don't know, I don't really know where to begin with, but because this panel concerns a youngish audience, I'll speak about natural study. My last book here, as just one example, because like Tanya mentioned, something similar I've also gone through with respect to interacting with urban audiences. Now, every time I begin a presentation on wildlife, I ask kids to name a national park, and especially in the urban context, the name Yellowstone comes first to kids even before a Kanha or a Bandhavgarh does.
Bandipur,
and that is a real cause of concern. So if you flip through natural study, you'll see that every single story is based in a different wildlife
Right.
sanctuary or national
That's
park in
it.
India. And,
Yeah.
that's something I really wanted to do, to just give them a sense of the extreme, diversity of both biodiversity and geography that India has.
Yeah. So I think what you're also saying, Rohan, is that okay, the fancy science communication that you're talking about, in a way, is also bringing to attention to children aspects of their own backyard that they perhaps don't know about. One part of it is like what we were talking with Tanya, is bringing their backyard right into the books. But also there are other aspects of the backyard which are not immediately in their backyard, but slightly further away. Wild places, where animals abide in a way which is different from what you would kind of expect otherwise. But it's also, no, I feel, in the force of, in the style of how things are presented. Part of it is writing, but also a lot is said in image. And your work is presenting it artistically as well. And you have a particular style that is very good in capturing emotions and and what do you call them, quirks, personalities. So each of your characters that you draw has a personality, and the species has a personality. The individual that is shown in that page has a personality. Now, what do you think that, I mean, part of it is that you have a reason for putting it that way, some artistic whatever reason, but what do you think that does when a child sees that? Has any child told you about this?
Well, to be honest, the cynicism just comes from me being me. I reflected onto my characters. I don't know if that's a good thing, but yes, I have had a lot of responses where people have, resonated, and to a certain extent even imbibed the traits of some of my characters. For example, I was interacting with a reader over email just the other day, and he was saying that natural study has become a bit of a problem in their household because the child has started to think of herself as a detective, and has been asking for all kinds of crime scene solving equipment from her parents. And well, that's a bit of a problem. But the flip side is that she has been stepping out into nature, trying to observe occurrences as crime scenes, much like natural study would do, and trying to solve them as a detective would. So I think that's the right kind of connection I'm aspiring to make with more readers.
No, I think it's so critical then, as you as someone who's in communication and is thinking in this manner, because I think if you see, there's a synergy amongst all of you in with Bijal as a writer and editor, Tanya as a writer and publisher and editor, and you as an illustrator and writer, in bringing out, in communicating about this, and for children to find themselves in what you're doing, and finding themselves and taking is the first step to having a greater response. And in those small steps, in what each one of you have done in your work, and the organizations that you've worked with, that the books that you've produced, you've brought in a range of responses that are critical to drawing children in to this. So before I open up the questions for the audience, is there anything else each one of you would like to share at this point in time? And then we could kind of perhaps go to questions from the audience.
I do want to say,
yes,
one of my first few classroom interactions, I was there with my book, and this young fellow comes up to me and says, "You know who I'm a fan of? Green humor." At which point I said, Green humor is a really good friend of mine. I can't tell you, my cool quotient went up by 50 points.
Right.
So.
No, I think it would be nice, again, maybe in closing comments from each one of you before we go to questions, just recall what has it been interacting directly with children about your work or about anything else, and that what does it leave you with before, and yeah.
I was just interacting with I think she was an 8th grader, and she was doing a school project on climate change, and she wanted my opinion as she mistakenly presumed that I'm an expert on climate change, but I never, in any case, I agreed to speak with her. But what I was really impressed by is just the sheer amount of knowledge that kids have today, and
Yeah.
you know, the kind
Amazing.
of literature they're reading and the kind of resources they're exposed to. I really, you know, reflected back on my time as an eighth grader. I was probably burning crackers, and I was probably unconsciously the right wing. I'm really glad where this entire movement is collectively going. There is some hope, even for a cynic like me.
That's wonderful. Tanya?
So yes, I would like to say that I don't know, Rohan, why you said that you don't like happy endings in stories.
I never
Because
said
I
that.
think
I just said that unhappy endings are more real. I never said I don't like it.
no, but I think kids today are, they are bombarded with news and, doomsday scenarios. They know all about climate change, its causes and evidence of climate change and things like that. And so we actually like to publish positive stories about communities taking action and actually bringing about the change. And kids have really responded well to those.
Tanya, I hope you accidentally didn't slip a spoiler to your book. Does it have a happy ending? No, you don't
It
have to
does
answer
have
that
a good
question.
ending.
And I also want to say that one of our, not one of our most popular book till date has been the Poop book.
Of
I
course.
don't know if yes. So nothing about climate change or serious doomsday scenarios. It's about poop, and that's the one that people are most connected to.
Actually, this is good that you brought this up, because that was actually the first question for. So I would invite Bijal and to respond to this as well. So as librarians, how do we speak to children without sounding the alarm too quickly? And Tanya, I've already responded in a way. But you could add to your response if you like, and Bijal, you as well.
I think one of the things that we have to do, and I don't think it's about where the endings go, but it's more about where do we leave the child with, in the sense, do we have to leave them with a message of hope, with a feeling of hope. I think you can share a climate fable like In the Land Where the Beatles Rule. You can share this gorgeous story where Rajiv's illustrations of that boy in the tree. You can share Ruddy. I think one of the main things is that talk honestly to a child, listen to their questions, answer them, because they're brimming with questions. But in all fairness, I would never be able to leave a classroom or a library without talking with hope. And I really think that's important. The other thing that, really bothers me sometimes is that I kind of feel like what we are constantly doing is that we're always talking about saving the planet. And I think what we need to start talking about is, and this is very similar to Tanya, what you were saying, is talking about loving the planet. You will always protect what you love. And I think that's the story that you want to share with your library members, with your students. Go out there, get Rohan to climb a tree, or just, go around your backyard. And once you know a tree, you will never want it to be felled, for instance.
Yes.
So that direct connect needs to happen. Just fall in love with your planet.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in love, I think, with my mango tree here. So I relate to what you say. Yeah. Tanya, would you like to add something?
No, I think Bijal has captured it beautifully.
Covered it. Right. In fact, I'll come back to you with another question. Before that, since we are talking of emotional connect in some ways to how we do it and how do we communicate. The next question is for Rohan. So why did you choose humor as a medium for talking about climate change?
Well, I don't know, I'm bad at tragedy. I never read Shakespeare. Therefore, No, no. I think it really has the power to. So it's like a handshake, between the subject and the reader. It really has the power to make the reader retain the information and also want them to respond to it. I think that's the beauty of
And humor does that.
right.
Yeah. I mean, just by looking at some of your hornbills, it's enough to fall in love with all hornbills. And when you start seeing them, the other time I was in the Western Ghats and I saw a small flock of great hornbills flying across, and I thought of you because suddenly they became more funny than what they used to be. I used to look at them and I used to think of it. Now they
They're
are also a little
magnificent. If you're perceiving them as funny, I really owe them an apology.
no, they come and land and they're a little wobbly when they land. So, that kind of has come up to me. You're right. There is a layers to that relationship that humor can build, that can bring out that also is a way to meld hope. Because I like Bijal pointed out, hope is so important. Otherwise, we are not able to see what our actions mean, what
Yes.
they could mean. Not just for us, but also for others around us. And humor also allows us to extend ourselves beyond us in so many other ways. So I think them coming together is critical in today's environment with climate change, especially. So the next question, again from the audience, is for Tanya. Coming from a small publisher focused on publishing about environment and conservation, what are the challenges that you face?
Challenges are many. We are a very small organization. It's just a 2-person team. So managing everything in the publishing process is, of course, challenging. But in terms of getting good stories and manuscripts, we are selective of what we publish. So we've like I said, that we like to publish positive stories. We like to publish about lesser known species. So we are selective that way. So those have also been challenging.
Challenges. Also, in a way, for small publishers, reach is a challenge. How do you reach your audience?
Course, exactly. And then with internal capacities and all, we are not able to publish in regional languages as much as we would like to. But then we are working on that. We are working through collaborations, reaching out to different publishers who publish in local languages, and bringing out our books that way.
Yeah, I saw some of your books in Kannada, and
yes.
It's quite well done in terms of it retains the illustrations, the layout of the books, while managing the local language, around it. Yeah. So getting your stories into regional languages has also been very important, right?
Yes.
Like Chippu Puttana Chamatkara. So this is Sharmila Dev's book.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but yes.
Yeah,
I know it's Portrix's Paw. It's a book about the pangolin.
The pangolin, exactly. Yeah. So I feel that reach now, if there are more publishers who take it on, like Ankita did for this book, and organizations like Parag have initiated the support for getting these books across. I think what is as important, and now I think I would also like to bring Bijal into this conversation, because getting books to audiences is so important. Children's books have such it's such a small part of the publishing scene in India, totally in any case. But in that, regional language publishing is even smaller, right? So getting your books into translation and printing them and taking them across through relationships with local presses is one thing. But you have also at Pratham Books tried another strategy that has kind of opened up this whole Pandora's box of what you could do with languages, no? So would you like to share a little bit about that approach to kind of getting books out? Because as far as climate is concerned, with the kind of technology that is kind of being accessed by many children, many others don't have it, but it has become more common.
That's true. I mean, so in 2015, we launched Storyweaver, which is
Yeah.
Pratham Books' open source digital platform where you can read stories for free. What we didn't realize at that point, and I think it's been fantastic to see it happen, is the way educators and librarians across the world and across different parts of the country started taking these stories and translating them into their language of use. Today, we've got over 330 languages on Storyweaver. They are Indian, the indigenous, the endangered languages, the international languages. And it's just amazing to see children being, I mean, I still remember this one workshop that Storyweaver had done in Chhattisgarh, where the books were translated into Gondi and then shared with, they were printed by the community, spiral bound and taken to children. And this was the first time children were reading the book in their mother tongue language.
Yeah, amazing.
And I think that's just so powerful to see the stories travel and reach the children who may not have access to books in their languages or just no access to books also often. So yeah, Storyweaver's been just so powerful to see it grow from strength to strength. And thank you for talking about it.
No, I think it's also important because stories about climate change can reach so much and people can participate in making it their own. I think that's what is wonderful about this as well, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, we've got a book out which is called We Hope Children on Climate Change.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And that's got children's voices that are that have been reinterpreted by some 15 illustrators.
Exactly.
And we're hoping that book will get more children to just think about their relationship with nature as well as the changing climate.
Yeah, I so agree. I wanted to extend this question to Rohan, but now there's another question that's cropped up from the audience, and I'll come back, Rohan, to you with your own experience. Maybe before we go into this question, if you could quickly share your experience of directly communicating with children and getting them to participate in this process of creation, like Bijal was sharing with in the case of Storyweaver and translating it to Gondi. You have worked with children kind of with images and illustrations. So what has it been when they participate in that work and respond to that situation? What do you think that is important as well?
Yes, absolutely. Which is the reason why I do workshops for
exactly.
kids to try and teach them a bit of what I do and also see what they come up with. So by the end of my workshop, a child is fully equipped to draw his or her own comic strip, and the kind of ideas that come out of them are very very surprising thoughts, like the thoughts that would probably never occur to me. So once there was this example of climate change in Bangalore. We were doing a workshop with kids in Bangalore, and one of them came up with this really bright and a very rather tragic cartoon of a stork stuck in a polluted Hedwal lake and inviting other birds to come in and join the bubble bath with it. And that was incredible. That was incredible. Yeah.
No, I think once children participate and capture the world around them and talk about it, they are also becoming stakeholders in a different way.
Right.
And I think all of you are doing different things to invite children to become stakeholders is such a big part of what the work that you are as individuals and as part of other groups are doing as well. So thanks, Rohan, for that. And I'll just open out the last question for all of you. So this is a question for everyone. So please choose to respond as you'd like to. How important is it for schools, institutions to integrate climate change into their curriculum and include children's literature to help bring a nuanced understanding of the problem? So,
well, now that they're scrapping evolution, I don't know what.
what we can apparently now it's 10th grade. I mean, everybody doesn't have access. Only those who take on biology in the 12th grade will have access to evolution. We don't have. Others are not. I don't know, for some reason. Yeah, but I would invite you to respond. Anyone? Bijal, Tanya, okay.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So, yes, I think, like I mentioned earlier, climate change is already a part of the curriculum. And I think it will talk only about things like causes and evidence in a very scientific way. And it's important to involve children's literature to understand the nuances. For example, take the book that we've recently published, Pedro and the Big Boom, that's
Of
on the
course.
Parag honor list this year. It's a book about mining.
Yeah.
Now, mining in school, you may learn that how it contributes to climate change. It's globally, I think it's 4 to 7% emissions of greenhouse gases are because of mining. Things like that you'll learn. But then, what are the other dimensions of mining? So the book talks about this small community in a village in Goa called Ratnagaon. It's a fictional village, but it's based very much on the reality in Goa. And it talks about how the community is affected in terms of how their water sources get polluted. There is red dust in the air all the time. People can't breathe. Their crops are damaged. Livelihoods are affected. So all of these nuances, and then how different characters respond to each of those situations. It's very important to talk about these issues in a fictional way, which can be engaging for kids.
Yeah. No, I think what you say is right, that just rather than present facts and dry information, you also need to present it in a way that children can relate to it. Completely agree with you there. Sorry, Rohan, you were going to say something?
Tanya, this is so much of a coincidence. Today morning, I drew a cartoon for my round glass column. I'm sorry I can't show it to you because it's not published yet, but I can tell you the premise. There's a pair of wolves looking at an open cast mine and saying, have you wondered why there are no children's books about big bad mines? And I'm really glad that this is coming up.
Yeah.
It's already out. Yeah, it's already out,
lovely. Okay.
Rohan. Yeah.
Okay.
We also have a book on hydroelectric projects and their impact on the community, if you're interested. How dams impact ecosystems, also in a story format. So I think stories are what kids connect to, and it's important.
Yeah,
it's very important to involve children.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah,
I feel like one of the things that we are seeing some amazing children's literature when it comes to climate in picture books. I think the natural world, like it's disappearing in our collective memory as children get older, it's not there in publishing. There are such few middle grade and young adult books that are commissioned or published that are about nature, about animals, about climate change. I mean, I think we'll be able to count them on our fingers. As to that. And I think that's something that as children grow older, that's something we do need to have, whether it's curriculum adjacent, whether it's in the curriculum or it's in bookstores. These books need to be across several age groups because, I think when children get to middle grade is when they start really engaging in terms of asking questions, wanting to do something, having that agency to do it. And I feel literature needs to respond to that in India as well.
Thank you, Vijay. I think we've had quite a lot of engagement with the audience now. Several questions that each one of you have responded to, and it's coming close to ending the session. And in this session, just to kind of give you a quick summary, the three panelists, Bijal, Tanya and Rohan, shared their individual journeys with communicating, creating children's literature and communicating, editing children's literature, illustrating it, in a way capturing what an individual's response means to climate change. At the same time, we are talking of one area here, which is children's literature. And it's important to see that an individual's response to climate change can happen across various, various fields. And in some ways, if we are seeing what's happening now is that each one of us has to face it in our backyards. Children are facing it already in their lives. And how do we kind of come together as a community, as groups who are working in this area to respond to it in creating work that is meaningful for children in places where they live, in languages that they speak, in images that they are able to relate to. At the same time, being able to address something at a global level. How does each child find a way, an entry point into responding to it through these means? So thank you, each one of you. But maybe Rohan, before we close, would you like to respond to that last question? I think I left you out. I'm so sorry about that, about curriculum and.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
a bit lost, but
yeah, I know. I just went ahead. I saw the time and I said, oh, it's nearly, we have come to an end. And I started.
No, that's all right. If you're running out of time, that's completely okay. I'll just put it out in a cartoon or something.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Rohan. Thanks so much. But thank you, Bijal, Rania, Rohan, for this. It was a wonderful conversation. I didn't feel like, it was some, the usual thing. And I enjoyed the time with you, and I didn't feel the time go by at all. But each one of you have done such stellar work in your own fields as individuals. And we know that your contribution is here to stay. And we hope children also draw from it and continue to engage with it in the years to come. And that you continue to kind of engage with children and children's literature in the years to come. So thank you so much for being part of this panel. And for many of the books, you please, for the audience, the Parag Honor List is up as a website, on the website. And many of the books that we have spoken about are part of that. So please look up the list. And you have the, on your screen right now, the website and the QR code where you can access, along with the social media handles for Parag. So please go ahead and subscribe and read the books that are there and support these wonderful people who have been part of this panel and many others who are part of this community who talk about, are serious about communicating about climate change with children. So thank you for being with us and have a good day.